thank you everybody for attending today. This is our Q2, Q3 feature roundup for App Builder. Basically what I wanted to do this week, because we're sort of in between releases, is just remind you what we've shipped, show you some new things that literally just shipped, and then talk about what's shipping in the next month or so. My name is Jason Barris, Senior VP of Developer Tools at Infragistics. This is my email, jasonb@infragistics.com. Please use it, and I will email you back if you want to set up a demo, if you have any questions, complaints, forward you on to the right folks on the team who can always best answer any questions or issues that you might have as you start using App Builder or Ignite UI. Or any of our products. So we're happy to hear from you and get all the good news or bad news or issues. So let's look at today's agenda. So today, obviously the feature roundup, I've listed some things here that I'm going to show, JSON URLs, grid configurator. If you've been joining us for our weekly webinars or YouTube lives, those are not going to be new to you, but the other items are new. Sketch, Design to Code, Adobe XD, and Design Assets. So I'm going to show you how to take a Sketch design and go right into the App Builder right from Sketch, and then do the same thing from Adobe XD. And then we've added this new feature called Design Assets, which is really cool. Now, always to keep up to date, you can always look at the changelog up on GitHub. So here, if you go to Ignite UI on GitHub and you jump into App Builder, there's 3 documents in here that are important. One of them is called changelog. And in the changelog, we always list everything that's new, or updated. So we have new features plus improvements for every release. What we're trying to do now is we had the September release. We just did an October release, trying to get more in this monthly cadence of releases. There's going to be a November release in a week or two. Maybe 3 weeks, but for sure by the end of the month, and then we'll have a December release. So we're just going to keep pushing out updates now that we're into a rhythm of shipping. I would say the official App Builder release, while it was earlier in the year, really in July, we added some key features. And since then, we've been trying to push out not only customer requests from you, but everything that's been on our backlog. So obviously, like everyone else, we're probably behind on our backlog and our roadmap, but we're churning out some pretty neat stuff. And we think it does add a ton of value to what you're doing. And so besides actually this changelog, if you go to the infragistics.com website and you go over to App Builder and you go to Help Docs, we also have a changelog here in the help doc. So you can always click changelog here. And this one isn't, was more up to date a minute ago, but it's a little bit behind pulling in the features from the latest release. But you can always go to the docs as well. I always use everything on GitHub. That's where the team lives, and that's where things are at. So GitHub is probably the best place to get the most up-to-date information. Use the chat and the Q&A for questions, and we're going to send a recording of this once we're done. Also, I mentioned this at every webinar. Use Discord. Discord is great. Oh, I thought I logged in earlier, but anyway, on Discord, we've got the Infragistics channel, which has an App Builder channel, and here you can interact directly with the product team. So please ask questions, learn information, get new things, whatever, all on Discord. It's the fastest and easiest way to get support. If you don't want to do it this way, you can still use the traditional support methods online, but Discord is simple and easy to use. Roadmap, I'll just refresh everyone on what's happening with the roadmap. So we're still on schedule for a beta of Blazor code generation on November 10th, which is during the .NET Conf. Actually, I'll hopefully be able to record some videos and whatnot and post them at the end of this week. But next week, we'll be able to demo it. Will it be in your hands next week? Maybe not. It might be a couple weeks after that. But the goal is that in the month of November, early December, this is in your hands, and you will be able to start using it in the December, end of November, December timeframe to start building out screens and then generating that Blazor code. Now, here's the thing. The Blazor code generation and the Angular code generation is simply an option. So what that means is go ahead and design all your screens, start building your apps right now, because all you need to do is say, oh, give me Blazor code, and then it'll spit out Blazor code. You're not like deciding in the beginning before you build any screens that, oh, I must choose Blazor. The app builder is built on a common app model. So everything that's in the toolbox is essentially framework agnostic. The design surface is framework agnostic. It's just a JSON definition of your screens and layouts. And then we generate code when you decide. So please don't wait for Blazor. If you want to use Blazor, just start using it now. Yep, I will paste the GitHub and Discord link into the chat, or JJ, if you have those from one of the decks, you can paste them in the chat as well. Alan just asked in the Q&A. Now, where I have shipped here, there's a little caveat. So digital assets you're going to see today in our demo. Adobe XD support is a beta, but Adobe is not approving, or there's some issue with the approval of the plugin in their store. It's really annoying. We're having a hard time going back and forth with Adobe. If anyone knows anyone at Adobe that can help us push this through, let me know in the chat. But we're talking to product managers there, but they have this way of submitting plugins, and Adobe XD is not in the list. All the other Adobe products are. So we're just running into a hiccup there on what's going on. So if you want to start using the Adobe XD UI kits and code generator, or the link, the extension into App Builder, just shoot me an email and I will get it to you. You can use it. It works. You're going to see it today, but it's just not something that you can install from the actual Adobe store. And then later in December, we're still looking at Swagger support and CSS Grid support. Swagger support, obviously more interesting to most people, where you can create your maybe a .NET Core app with a web API, publish it to Azure, one-click publish. I've got all my API definition in Swagger. We'll ingest that Swagger, let you select what you want to use, gets, puts, posts, etc. And then we'll generate those APIs inside of App Builder automatically and sort of continue down the path of taking care of all your data access. And then CSS Grid support will be mostly transparent to you, but it's just updating from the Flex layout that we're actually using today. So with that, if you haven't been to any of our presentations yet, what is App Builder? It's the fastest way to design complete business apps. It's a cloud-based WYSIWYG. Basically, it's like Visual Studio, but in the cloud, and it generates code that you can then use in Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code. So 60 plus controls in the toolbox, a bunch of property editors, and then you can synchronize that code with GitHub, or you can download that in a zip file and then use that in your favorite code editor. So our goal is to really eliminate all that tedious work that you usually have to do when you're designing screens in your applications. So let me go ahead and hit escape out of this. And the first thing I'm going to do is pop open a browser here, and I'm going to show you the updates to how we generate code for data access. So if you recall, we've got xl2json.io. This is a utility app that Brian built for the product, and Andy designed on our team. And the whole point of this is that App Builder is a SaaS-based product. So it's in the cloud. So if you have data, it needs to be in the cloud to be able to use App Builder. Well, how do you get like data into the cloud if you don't have some server set up or whatever? Well, what we did is we created this xl2json utility, which will let you take an Excel file, drag it into the editor, and then using, of course, Infragistics spreadsheet and other controls, we'll load it up and we'll create a JSON file for you. So for example, this is the orders table from Northwind. If I click employees, this employees table, and all this is using the IG, this is I think a web component, or no, this is an Angular application. our Angular spreadsheet, Monaco source code editor. But the idea is, here's my customer's data. I want to get a link and use this now in App Builder. So I copy my URL, and now that URL is something that I can use in App Builder. If I go here and I just paste it in, you can see that this is the JSON that will now be used inside of App Builder. So how do we get into App Builder? You can go to infragistics.com. Underneath design and development, you'll see App Builder as the first link. So this is the entry point that we want you to use to build web apps. So I go to the App Builder homepage. I'm going to click sign in, and I jump right into my registration. And here I am inside of the cloud. Now I've been testing, you can see a bunch of different examples. We're going to ignore those, and I'm just going to go here and click new app. So let me click new app. And what you're prompted with when you do a new application in App Builder is this new app screen. You can choose from one of our default layouts as the starter point, or one of our sample apps. When you're just beginning App Builder, I highly recommend you select one of these sample apps and you just start digging through it, start learning the product through, sort of almost reverse engineering how these screens are built, and then of course you can drag and drop and do other things, and you'll learn how it sort of works. What I'm going to do is just use a blank layout, and I just have a blank screen here. Some new things that we added in this release are these option here by the help file. So you've got quick tips, and now these quick tips will pop up, and they're just giving you hints on how to use certain capabilities of the product. Most of the challenges for most developers coming into this is layout. So there's a bunch of useful tips on how Flex Layout works, how to change the size of things, how to fill container space, how to do alignment. It's one of those things that you need to spend maybe 30 minutes with the product, maybe an hour, and then you're like, oh, that's how that works. Okay, I get it now. Because coming from a .NET developer perspective, you may not be familiar with CSS layout. If you're coming from an Angular or React perspective, you may, but you may hate it. So what we're trying to do is make it super easy for you to do this stuff. So quick tips is one of the new things we've added. We've also integrated in some other videos, help file, etc. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a grid to my screen. Again, there's two ways to do it. I could go into my toolbox, type in grid, and drag and drop this grid, and it shows up on my screen. Or I can do Control E for everything, and I can type in grid or any component, and it will just allow me to quick add items. Once you start getting really good with the product, you'll be able to do things like quick add and whatnot. And I'm not going to do a lot of resizing here, like grow and shrink. But what I will do is sort of a static layout. You can change positions on whatever you'd like here. But what we're doing here is I want to add that JSON file that I just added with Excel to JSON. So I'm going to hit plus here on my data sources window, and it says REST API. So I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say webinar REST customers, and we're going to add a URL, or I could upload JSON. Let me add a URL, paste, done. Now my data is here. I'm going to click select data, and you can see that these are my fields that were available in my table. Let me double click this and change this to the customers webinar table. And I'm going to select all these fields, and postal code, I'll just say is a string, and I'll say done. So now I have my data source over in the data sources window. I'm going to go back to my grid. I'm going to say I want data, but I want from my webinar REST customer table 1. And then you can see that I have my customer data. Now from here, I want to configure my grid with a few more features. So the way you configure the grid is with this features option here in the editor. So I'm going to click plus, and I want to do things like maybe row selection and maybe grouping, column hiding, column moving, row actions. So there we go. So I basically just added some features to the grid with a simple click. The nice thing is, if you're just learning the grid in Angular or Blazor, you'd probably have to read the docs for this, or go through some samples. I just did it all in like a nanosecond. And then here you can see here for row actions, it says I need a primary key. So from my table, I can say the primary key is customer ID. and that's done. So now let's preview this. There's my grid. And then you can see here, if I expand this a bit and I'll resize the window, it actually added all the columns. It added the components for the action strip and the toolbar. And then it updated each column with the attributes that I set in the property. So this is why I think I say, you know, I don't want to offend anyone, but man, you're crazy for not using a tool like this just to get going and get your screens thrown together, because it is so easy to do this. So now I've got my grid configured. What I'm going to do is go back to edit, and I'm going to publish this to GitHub. So I'm going to call this webinar repo 1, and I'm going to make it public. So I'm going to create the repository and then publish this to GitHub. Now, what that means is that source code that you just saw is going to be updated in GitHub, as well as the entire application. So today, this is Angular. Next week, there's going to be a button that says Blazor or Angular. I'm going to push Blazor next week when I do this demo, and it's going to upload Blazor. So here, actually, I made a mistake and I didn't click view the repo. So I'm going to view this on GitHub just by going back, and you can see that here is my repository. And what I want to show here is inside of app. If I go to my master view and I go to master view component TS, what did we do here? And let's make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. As you can see that we are subscribing to a service called webinar rest customer service .get customers webinar subscribe. So we're going to subscribe to this. So that means that any changes to this data source will automatically show up in my grid. And now if I go back to the app and I go to services, you'll see here webinar rest customer.service. What's in webinar rest customer.service? Super simple. It's actually too simple. It's just a call to my web, my JSON on the web. If I was using a web API, when we add our Swagger support, this will be a call to your web API. So what we're doing is eliminating as much data access code as possible through drag and drop and click, click, click. If you want to know how to do master detail and other things, just watch the webinar replay from 2 weeks ago, because that's the only thing we covered. Was now I've got 2 grids on the screen or 3 grids. How do I click one and then go back to the service and then load the grid from the other? So there's all kinds of recordings on there for that right now. But I can't wait for next week when I can see all this in Blazor. That is going to be so freaking cool. I can't wait to get that into your hands. And then if you don't want to go watch that webinar from last week, just go to, let me just click here and show, repository, sorry. Go to these repositories and there's webinar master detail demo here. And I'll just paste this into the chat. If you want to look at this, I will paste it here into the chat to hosts, to everyone. And can you talk about row actions? So row actions is actually really sweet. And let me see, it does. So there's a little caveat here. When you are in App Builder and you are in preview mode, certain things like don't come through in the preview mode, like my whole CRUD experience wouldn't come through in the preview mode, but the row actions will give me my indicators. And if I click edit, it will pop my my row into an edit mode. So it will give you the feeling for what this thing actually does. So the point of row actions is if you use Gmail or you use something like SharePoint, when you hover over rows, there's this tool hover object that gives you options. This one has an option because I said row pinning. It will allow me to pin rows to the top. So you can see that I've got rows pinned to the top. I can unpin rows. I can edit rows. So you get the CRUD experience with data entry and editing. So I can do cancel or done. I can add a new row at that point. So add a new row right where it's at, or I can delete a row right where it's at. So the nice thing about row actions is we're trying to build in a bunch of default experience that you don't need to worry about. Then from that default experience, if you want to customize it, you can add whatever row actions that you want. So for example, if I go here, I go to design development, I go to Angular, and I'm going to go to the grid samples, view all Angular grid samples. There is a help topic on row actions. Let's see here. Row selection, row pinning. It's not called row actions here. So what is it called? Let's go to the grid. Conditional display, filtering, remote data, summaries. Shoot, I don't know what the name of the topic is. Additional styling. Someone will find it and tell me, I'm sure. And let me go to how to. It might be stuck in there. Nope. So if anyone finds the correct topic for row actions, paste it into the chat so I can bring it up. But what the sample shows is that how you can add your own buttons to the row actions. And then you might have like, go to a new screen, or maybe edit these 2 cells, not the whole grid. So there's a lot of flexibility with row actions with this UI that you can do. It's actually pretty slick. All right, so let me move on. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to stop sharing this screen, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen on my Mac. And on the Mac, I'm going to show you real quick the Sketch, the new design to code with Sketch. So let's open up this guy, share screen, like so. Desktop 1, share screen. All right, so here we are. Oh, Gene said, I guess my point is I will have to add code to the fact. So the code that you need to write would just be updating the data source. So what we're doing is the data source right now is just pulling in data that is, we're subscribing to that JSON file. So then you'll have to do the post, which we will do eventually. Like by the middle of December, we'll have all that round tripping with data sources already built in. But right now we don't. So you would have to add the code to actually do the CRUD work yourself. But stay tuned and it will be there. And then if you want to customize it, yeah, you'd have to customize that yourself. All right, so I'm sharing my screen here. Yep, looks good. So what I'm going to do is open up Sketch. And on the Infragistics website, so if you go to infragistics.com, and let's go back into App Builder, I want to show you where you get these assets. So let me sign in. And what you need to use if you're using Sketch or Adobe XD is the design system. So we've got the UI kits, we got the plugin for Sketch, and we got a bunch of sample files. So essentially, you download these things, you stick them into Sketch, or with Adobe XD, you'll go to the Adobe Marketplace and you'll install it from there, and then you're kind of done. And then once you have all that, when you're inside of Sketch, like so here I've downloaded the People app from our website, and now here's my People app. When you're inside of Sketch, what you get is all of the symbols for Indigo Design. So this is like your toolbox. So it's all the controls that are part of Indigo Design that you would drag and drop onto your Sketch file. Now, for a developer, you're like, who cares? I would never use this. That's probably true. This is for designers. So what a design team would do is they would use the UI kit, and then they would design all the screens in Sketch because that's their tool. And then they would say, hey, developer, we've designed this. We've done user testing. It's ready to go. Here's the design. And then you're like, okay, what the heck am I supposed to do with that? Well, when you're using Ignite UI and you're using App Builder, it's really simple. So what you want to do, and why is this thing covering my screen? Hold on, this toolbar is in my way here. So let me move that down. So what you want to do when you're inside Sketch, and just real quick, if you look here on the left-hand side, you've got list items, list headers. So these are real components inside of Sketch. So we've taken the UI kit concept and we've expanded it so you have like additional properties inside of Sketch and Adobe XD. So when your designer's doing stuff, they can set properties that you could then use inside of your code, like Visual Studio, VS Code, or App Builder. So here I've got my screen. It's all designed in Sketch. It looks fine. And now my developer, or I've done my user testing, the development team's ready to go. So we've got the Indigo Design plugin. So you have a few options here. You can change the theme. Maybe you want to do some styling. Maybe you want to create your own design system off of this. That's great. You want to sync the prototype to our image-based prototyping server, or I just want to create an app. So I'm going to click Create App, and I get my dialog come up here for Indigo Design. You can select what workspace you want this to be in. I'm going to leave it in personal, and I'm going to say, from Sketch webinar. And now I'm just going to click Create App. So what this is doing, it's taking that file, goes to the cloud, generates my code, not my code. It generates my App Builder common object model, and then it's going to represent it inside of App Builder. So here, if I click this guy, it'll actually go into App Builder, and you can see, okay, so let me caveat this real quick. You can see here that these are the screens that were actually inside of the Sketch file, and these are actual UI components and controls. And now if I click preview, this is actually list controls, IG list controls with real stuff. Like, this is the real code, no garbage code. It's production ready code. Now, what you would want to do is, because Sketch doesn't have a concept of data binding, what I'm going to do now to finish this app is I would go ahead and I would go to my list control here. So I've got my list item, and I would say that I want this thing data bound, and I would select the data source, and it would go ahead and it would bind to all this data. But for the savvy viewers out there, you're like, wait a minute, the screens inside of Sketch were green, and you just showed me something that is dark theme. Well, I ran into a bug today. So this is what happened. So if I go to my plugin, Indigo Design Themes, what you can do with this is customize your themes. So what I did earlier was I told it that I wanted to use the Material Dark theme. But you have the option here of using one of our built-in themes or creating a new theme, light or dark theme, and then you can change all the colors, all the typography, whatever you want. So what I did is I said use Material Dark, and I found a bug in the plugin where when I clicked apply, the actual Sketch design didn't refresh on the screen, but the underlying model did. So then when I did the code generation, it was dark. So I'm not trying to do any smoke and mirrors here. It's just a bug in the plugin. When the bug is fixed, everything here will be Material Dark. So anyway, I just want to highlight that. So that's going right from Sketch into an app. I mean, this is incredible. There's nothing like this on the market. So if your design team is using Sketch, and if you can say, hey, why don't you use this Infragistics UI kit? Because if you use it, we can get code directly from this, either Blazor or Angular. This is where you save that 80% of time in your app development. It's incredible how much time you can save doing this. So let me go ahead and stop sharing here. I'm going to go back to my PC, and I am going to show you the same thing in Adobe XD. So yeah, everyone will get, Susan, everyone will get this webinar recording in an email by tomorrow, along with the slide deck. So everyone will have access to that. Let's go ahead and share my screen here. Screen one, share. Cool. We're back here in our app builder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Adobe XD. Now, this is the same thing in Adobe XD. If you're not familiar with all of these vector-based apps like Adobe XD, Figma, Sketch, they all look exactly the same. So like if Adobe or if Sketch wasn't a different color, I would say, is that Adobe XD or Sketch? Because they all have a similar thing where on the right-hand side, you've got this property layout window. On the left-hand side, you have all of these components or libraries. And then you've got tools to actually do your vector design. So these are design tools, like designers use these things. Developers don't use these tools. But the reason we have these integration points is because your design team is using one of these tools. And if they are designing apps that you need to build, and they can use our UI kits or create a design system based on our UI kits, you automatically get code for free. And you'll notice what we did with App Builder is if you look at the property editors for these guys, and I'll go over here to App Builder into edit mode, they look really similar. We tried to stick with what people were used to using with, of course, some additional developer features. So let me go back here. So they'll be familiar when you're using them. Let me go back here. It's the same story. I'm going to go to plugins, Indigo Design, create new app. I'm going to put it in my projects. This is going to be people app from XD webinar, XX, just to make sure I didn't call it something like that before. And I click create app. Now it's generating my app. My app is ready. Let's click the link and we go right into App Builder. And this is right into the preview. So remember, this had 3 screens. Just a little tip and trick here. I can navigate through screens this way if I don't have navigation built into my app, or we can go to edit. And now here I am. And I've got my 3 screens again, my people home, my edit person, and my add person. And then, of course, all of the same thing. So what I would do, and I'm actually doing a video on this right now, that I'm going to post to YouTube, is how do I take this now and make it into a real data bound app with CRUD and all that stuff? It's not complex. The hardest part for any person on this webinar, if you're coming from a non-web platform, is going to be the layout. But we tried to make this easy with Flex Layout. And when we implement CSS layout in the December timeframe, we're going to make it even easier. So layout is always the challenge. But if you battled with WPF, like moving from Windows Forms to WPF, it shouldn't be that hard for you. If you're coming from Windows Forms, that's like this absolute positioning sort of way of building apps. It is going to be a little bit harder for you. But this is the same thing. I've got my code and I can do all the same stuff here. So I'll just publish this to GitHub. I'll create a repo called 123. Let's go ahead and publish this. And something went wrong with GitHub. Let's try that again. It's probably the name that I gave it. Let's do this. Pick a repository. How about test 123? I don't know if GitHub allows repos that begin in numbers, but it's live. It's a live data. So something's going on with GitHub. Don't know what, but this is a live demo. And of course, something must go wrong, but it's the same process, published to GitHub. And by the way, if something annoying like that happens and you're just getting going here and you really want to start using this code, just click download zip. And now you've got the zip file. Oh, so this looks like there's a problem with the code generation on our side. So we'll have to look into that. Bummer. So something went wrong here. Maybe it's from coming from the XD plugin. Not sure, but either way, we'll take a look at this today. So if you want to try XD, you need to let me know because I need to send you this plugin. It's not on adobe.com yet. So please let me know. I know there's 2 big feature requests that people have asked for all summer: Blazor support and Adobe XD support. So now basically we're in the mix of shipping all of these right now. So if you want some of these to start playing with in pretty much a semi-release fashion, you should be okay. And I'll send you the links. So with that, looks like we're a little bit over time. Let me jump back over to my slides. Discord, JJ posted everything in the chat already. So you all have that. It looks like we've answered all the questions that came across. I do inside of this have a poll. So let me go to poll and let me launch my poll. So if you can take a couple minutes and take some time to answer the App Builder feature roundup and roadmap poll. If you've already answered the poll questions previously, they're very similar. But if you're new to the webinar, please let us know. Everything you tell us impacts our roadmap. So everything is pretty much customer driven. We really want to respond to what you need, because if we're building stuff that you don't need, you're never going to use it. But right now we've got some pretty good adoption on App Builder. We got a lot of incoming. And we would love to hear from you what you need in App Builder. So let me go back to my slides as you guys are all answering the poll there. Oops. The next webinar will be, the next YouTube Live will be November 10th. November 10th, I'm hoping on YouTube Live to show Blazor CodeGen. As long as everything's functioning, it should be functioning by the end of this week, which means next, I think the 10th is next Wednesday. We will be showing the Blazor CodeGen, which means we're literally like days or weeks away from getting into your hands. It's pretty exciting. And then November 16th for sure on the webinar, which is on a Tuesday. It's 2 Tuesdays from now. We're going to just be showing Blazor CodeGen and how all that works. So please join us for that session. It will be pretty exciting. And finally, if you want to try App Builder, infragistics.com/products/app builder. You want a demo, email me or sales, and we'll set something up. And then just from the polling perspective, I'll give you guys a little insight on what everyone is saying. It looks like REST is pretty popular on how people are doing data access in modern web. Obviously, SQL Server, very popular. Google BigQuery, not so popular. Are you a developer designer? Most of you today are developers, which is cool. 100% think App Builder would accelerate your dev process. If you want a demo, a deep dive, please let me know. We can go into all kinds of detail in a demo to get you started with the product. We do that for every customer. So if you want to ask more questions, you're confused about something, you don't like something, you're unsure, just shoot us an email and we'll do that. And then it looks like from a design perspective, Adobe XD is the leader as well as none. So 39% of you don't use a design tool. 39% of you use Adobe XD. Now this shifts based on the webinar and the audience. So we know in the market, Adobe is huge. We know that Figma is huge. We know that Sketch is huge, but it's not like the darling anymore because, there's other guys come up and they start adding features. But we want to support you wherever you're at. So with Sketch and XD support now, and then Figma support coming probably, I'm going to say end of Q1, maybe early Q2 2022, we'll have you covered on no matter what design tool you use. Many of you are learning web tech or starting your web journey. I think this tool is great just to do layout and CSS. It just solves all those problems. Looks like 50% of you have tried Angular, a few web components, lots of Windows Forms developers as well. And then it's pretty much split evenly between VS and Visual Studio. There's some JetBrains and some others in there. So thank you everyone for answering that poll. So Gene, MS Power Apps has a web portal initiative. Are you going to offer something similar? I would need more information that what you mean by the web portal initiative. What our goal is with the low code tool is to let you design anything you want. So we're not going to stop you from doing something. We just want to accelerate it. So for example, if I go here, I go to new app, we're shipping these sample apps. Could one of these be like a web portal that you modify? So here, this is a team collaboration app with a couple screens. If I click preview, I'm over here on this screen and we've got some navigation built in here, but we're not going to build an end-to-end portal, but what we're going to do is continue to put these sample apps that have end-to-end scenarios with data binding. Because if you have an end-to-end scenario and you have data binding built in, all you need to do then is change out whatever data we're using with your data, and then hopefully all the work is done. So we're just going to continue down that low code path. So if that didn't answer your question, let me know and I will give you more information. Usri, I'm a new user, is having the ability to add authentication. No, Usri, we're not. We might have a sample of doing authentication authorization, but based on your platform and where you're authenticating, like here, if I go to Google google.com, you'll see here like authorization, Azure, Angular. So now tutorial, create an app that uses Microsoft Identity call from Graph API. So the thing about authorization and authentication is it's very complex, and you've got like access tokens and things like that. There's so many examples of this on the web for a specific platform. So here is some sample Angular code that you could use. But the thing is, you need the token from your server. So here where it says your client ID, your authority, and all this stuff, these are things you would need. Now, that being said, inside of App Builder, if I go back to App Builder, where's my App Builder? Oh, I guess I closed them all. So if I go back to App Builder, I'll log back in here. And I go to this new sample here. Let me go to sign in. I'm going to do a new app, and we've got, I think it's in the travel app. Let me click try sample here. So what we did in App Builder with the this app is we added all the screens, which would allow you to do login, reset password, new password, sign up. For your own provider, right? So like you would have a database with usernames and passwords, and then you could do something like this. We created these screens for you. The nice thing about App Builder is I can, I can select objects here. I'm going to select this guy, and I'm going to do a Control C, and then I can paste this into any other app, so I can just reuse it. But if you're doing something like this, so let me close this out, and I'll click sign in. Or actually, let me sign out. And then I'll click sign in again. This is like a universal login thing that you can get with providers. Like they provide the whole UI. And then like I want to do a Microsoft, I would click this and it would trigger the whole Microsoft flow. So I don't see us getting into that. We might eventually, as we're adding more low code features. But right now, I can tell you it's not on the roadmap for the near term. I would say if you want to use those screens, take a look at the travel app, and then maybe just test plugging in some of that code that you'd find on Google. All right, let's see if there's any more questions in the chat here. Doesn't look like anything here. Q&A. Portal wrapper. Let's see, this is an example. Power Apps portal. So no, this is not what we're doing here. We are a screen designer, WYSIWYG tool. That's what we are. We're not a portal. The idea is you create screens, we generate all the code, and then your dev team finishes that code, adding authorization, authentication with what you already have in place, or maybe something new, adding data access with maybe on-prem servers or cloud servers. If we're not providing enough of that for you, doing some business logic on screens, so we aren't doing anything like this in terms of a portal. I'm not even sure what this is actually. But Power Apps is a little bit different tool than this. I would say this is more of a no-code tool because you really don't need to write any code. It's all power flows and connectivity to the Microsoft Dataverse, they call it, with all the data access. So, but Gene, keep an eye on the roadmap, and we will. You'll know what's coming up there. Will there be a community edition? No, we won't have a community edition like Syncfusion. At least that's not in the plans right now. So David, the Common App model is not published yet. We will be publishing it, and it is extensible. So what our goal is to publish the Common App model, the code generation model, and the how to do extensibility for components. I hope to have that done by the end of this year, but I'm not sure if we can. And the purpose of that would be if there's something that you want to generate in code and we're not doing it, you could do it if we have this extensibility. Or let's say, we enable extensibility on the design surface with components. And there's a way to surface more metadata in our property editors. We don't have that right now, but that could be a path to extensibility for you. So that could be something in the future. So is round robin planned in the future? So it'll basically do round robin today. So the issue today with round robin, so the way round robin would work is through your source code provider, right? So either TFS or GitHub. So if you are publishing to a branch that's not master, and then you have 20 people working on code, UI, et cetera, and then you are doing merges into master, then you could change whatever you want in App Builder, and you could merge to your design branch, and that design branch will have changes, and then you could merge those to master. You could selectively merge screens to master. You could add a new screen and only merge that into master. So there's all kinds of techniques to do that. As pulling in from GitHub into App Builder, it is on our backlog. So for example, let's say that you did some design work and then you went away for a month and a bunch of developers did a bunch of stuff and designers also did stuff. And now GitHub does not reflect what's in App Builder. But what you want to do is you want to pull in whatever's in app or whatever's in GitHub or TFS into App Builder. So that's the new representation of what's surfaced on the Common App model. So that is on our backlog to do that, but that's more advanced. So cool. Michelle said, for whomever was asking about authentication, Angular has a login template as authentication. And so, yeah, it looks like we've got a sample there right in our docs. So adding a third-party social provider. So that's another cool thing. So we fully support Angular schematics and the CLI. So this means that anything that I get from GitHub, right, I'm in Visual Studio Code. So for example, if I'm in Visual Studio Code, and let me see if I can open up an older open recent. Let's open up the code from last week. This was the master detail demo from a couple weeks ago. So I'm in here. So at this point, when I type in IG, I'm triggering. Whoops, I don't have it installed. So let me do an npm install. Ignite UI -CLI. Whoops. So once the Ignite UI CLI is installed, then I can go ahead and add anything I want into this project from Ignite UI, and then it's just part of my project. So maybe the designer did a bunch of stuff. I've got this app now, but now I want to add a new screen, but I'm a developer and I don't want to use the design sketch thing or whatever. Or maybe I don't have App Builder, but I got this from another developer. So from this point, oh, I wonder why this isn't letting me do my my IG identifier. So from here, if everything was working right, of course, demo gods, IG would come up. It would prompt me just like in this doc with, hey, what do you want to add to this application? And in this case, what I want to add is I want to add a side navigation and login. So I can go ahead and add the side navigation and login template into this project. Then it'll just add all the screens, add all the dependencies. And then according to this help doc, I could wire it up myself with my social provider. So we try to make it easy for you. And this is all just kind of part of modern web development. There's a lot of people doing a lot of different things. Where App Builder kind of falls in really nicely is it will accelerate all that screen design. You don't have to worry about it. And we'll keep adding more of this stuff, as you guys ask for it. So everything that we're seeing here in these Q&As ends up somewhere on the backlog. All right. So I think we've answered all the questions from everyone. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We went over by about 30 minutes. It looks like most people stuck around. I appreciate that. Keep an eye on your email for the next webinar. It's going to be in 2 weeks, but next Wednesday, we will have a YouTube live session. And like I said, hopefully we'll be showing Blazor CodeGen. The next webinar will also be Blazor CodeGen, and we'll continue to update you on what's new in the product. But please, again, if there was a question that was not adequately answered, or you didn't like my answer, or you want more information, shoot me an email, jasonb@infragistics.com. I will paste this into everyone. Yeah, we're good to go. Everyone have a great end of the day and great rest of the week. Thank you.